Father Malachi Martin, was he a priest? Was he a bishop? Could he have been even more than that? He's an interesting character, a great man of mystery. Polyglot, had a doctorate, archeologist. He was a spy behind enemy lines during the Cold War. In fact, he was tortured at a KGB prison.
Not only was Father Martin, I guess, an intelligence officer for the Vatican behind the Iron Curtain, he was ruthlessly tortured by the KGB.
That Malachi believed because of this satanic ceremony held at the Vatican in 1963, a malign power had alternately referred to as the Superforce or the Anti-Church had indeed ensconced itself in the Vatican.
Referred to as the enthronement of the prince in the citadel of the enemy.
He read the Third Secret when he was under Cardinal Bay.
Yes.
But he never revealed it verbatim. Did JP2 reveal the Third Secret? He only gave me a piercing stare in response.
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Praise be to God in all things. There is a brand new book. It drops today. Malachi Martin in the Shadow of the Vatican, written by Robert Marro Jr. And boy, oh boy, the great man of mystery. Let me just tell you something Rob and I have talked about many times over the past few years is Malachi Martin. He can be a very confrontational character. Many people love him or many people hate him. It's hard to find that middle ground sometimes, but this guy, listen to this. This is page 21. Few figures of the 20th century embody the swashbuckling, globe-trotting spirit of adventure, intellect, and danger, quite like the fictional archaeologist Indiana Jones. Wait, are you saying that was fictional? I thought that was real. Anyway, examining the life and exploits of the Reverend Dr. Malachi Martin, a scholar, archaeologist, swordsman, exorcist, spy, polyglot, and Vatican insider, it becomes clear that his life in sum bore more than a passing resemblance to being a real-world counterpart to Spielberg's legendary character. The real Indiana Jones. Robert Marro Jr. joins us to discuss it. Good morning to you, Rob. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you for having me on.
Praise be to God, the great man of mystery. I want to get a couple of things out of the way quickly because there's some juicy tidbits in this book that I think many people aren't going to be aware of, that they're going to want to hear about, at least some part. So let me just throw a couple of the quick curveballs at you that everybody brings up when it comes to the Malachi Martin thing. Well, he was let go of the Jesuits and he was no longer a priest. He was laicized. Was he a priest, even though he was living in a New York City apartment, essentially as a layman?
Well, he wasn't a layman. He was a priest. The Jesuits acknowledged in a 2004 letter from the Jesuit Office of Communications at the National Jesuit Conference in Washington, D.C. I believe the priest is now deceased, but at the time the priest's name was Father Tom Widener, and he acknowledged that he spoke with the former superior general of the Jesuits, Father Vincent O'Keefe. And Father O'Keefe acknowledged that, yes, Malachi Martin remained a valid priest until he passed away. He was a validly ordained priest.
So then everybody says, well, then why was he living with a woman in an apartment in New York City? Why did he wash dishes? Why did he drive a cab? Why did he write books? Why didn't he wear his priest's collar? Why didn't he act like a priest?
All right. Well, first I'll challenge the assumption of your question. To phrase it as he was living with a woman for a Catholic priest sounds gravely inappropriate. The situation was actually, he was a tenant within a small apartment within the overall much larger apartment of the Lavanos Greek shipping family on East 63rd Street off Park Avenue in New York City. He was a tenant of Mrs. Kakia Lavanos, and she was his gatekeeper. So many people wanted to get in touch with, get a hold of, or see Malachi Martin that she probably spent a good 25% of her waking time just saying no to people, because Malachi was too nice and he'd see everybody if he could. But he was a tenant within their apartment. Many people don't realize that it was a custom for wealthy European families up until quite recently to have a priest live in residence and provide them with the sacraments. The most famous version of that, actually, is the Von Trapp family, the Von Trapp family singers from The Sound of Music. Although he was not depicted in the movie, they had a Father Wisner who lived with them. And in addition to saying Mass and providing the sacraments, he was a professional musician. He was an expert, and he actually trained the Von Trapp family singers for years. So it's nothing unusual. It's the way people phrase the question. That's the problem.
Well, again, why did he wear the collar? I think that's another question people ask all the time. Why did he dress like a layperson if he was, in fact, a priest? But let me go take that and put one more log on the fire to get to some of the more juicier stuff, let's just say. Because in your memoirs, you talk a lot about the early life and background of Father Malachi Martin, a man who, by the way, as a boy, got to meet Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. Kind of a cool story if you think about it. But he was also a spy. Tell me about that. How was he a spy?
Okay, well, first off, it's not that he met Hitler and Mussolini as a singular person with one-on-one meetings. He actually went with his Boy Scout troop in the 1930s, the Irish Boy Scouts. Ireland had recently regained its independence in the very bloody War of Independence in the 1920s. And along the lines of the friend, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, the Boy Scouts, his Boy Scout troop, went to Berlin, where they were introduced to Adolf Hitler in kind of a meet and greet. And the same thing happened in Mussolini. And for the juicier details of that, here it is. So, and you asked about his being a spy. The Vatican, after World War II, most people are aware that the Soviet Union clamped what I believe Winston Churchill famously called an Iron Curtain across the border between Eastern and Western Europe. There was quite a substantial Catholic population in what were called the captive nations, held captive by the USSR. And the Vatican wanted to minister to them. However, the Stalinists and then the Soviets under Khrushchev maintained an iron grip on religious practice within the countries that they controlled and occupied. They had institutions not unlike today's Chinese Patriotic Association, which was the state-approved communist church. And then there was the church loyal to Rome. And those are the people that the Vatican was ministering to. They ministered to those people by what is called the covert infiltration of Roman Catholic priests behind the Iron Curtain to take care of the flock, to minister to the flock, and to take care of some rather dicey administrative matters that arose. Not only was Father Martin, I guess, an intelligence officer for the Vatican behind the Iron Curtain, but at one point, his future boss, Jesuit Cardinal Augustin Bea, was also one of those Vatican operatives behind the Iron Curtain.
In the book, you talk about why he was sent there and what he was supposed to do. But as a result of the duties that he was being sent, it required that he be elevated to a very special status. Tell me about that.
That's correct. I don't want to give away spoilers in the book, but a situation arose in Czechoslovakia in the underground church that required the facilities and faculties of a bishop. Unfortunately, the local bishop could not take action without being deliberately revealed to the Czech STB secret police, and they were controlled by the KGB. So the bishop was in a bind, and he told Rome, you have to send someone who's a bishop to take care of this, and they have to be willing to pay a very steep price if the secret police catch them. That's not a guarantee. We'll do our best to ensure it doesn't happen, but in the event it does, the person has to realize and be fully cognizant of what they're walking into.
So he was elevated to the rank of bishop. He was consecrated a bishop in order to be sent behind the Iron Curtain. That is fascinating because that you don't go backwards, right? Like you're made a bishop, you're a bishop for life. I mean, you could be laicized, I suppose, and your rank stripped from you, your position stripped from you. But if that doesn't happen, then once a bishop, always a bishop. So Malachi Martin was a bishop until the day he died.
That's correct. It's important to note that his status was known as a bishop in pectore, which in Latin means to hold close to the chest. And in this case, it was known only to the Holy Father and a select few other people within the Vatican Secretariat of State. I believe he was consecrated a bishop by Archbishop Domenico Tardini in the Vatican, and Archbishop Tardini was the head of the part of the Vatican Secretariat of State for extraordinary ecclesial affairs.
And Malachi Martin, things didn't go as planned or didn't go as well as they'd hoped behind the Iron Curtain. So he had an extended stay with the KGB at one of their air quotes here, prison resorts. And I'm not going to give the description. You got to read the book if you want the description. But let me just tell you, I'm glad I never have to do that. That was pretty rough. I mean, I would argue most people probably spend the rest of their life with PTSD after experiences like that. In your time with him, you spent about 8 years, in the last 8 years of Malachi's life, being a friend of his. Did he suffer from any sort of psychological damage from the time he spent behind the Iron Curtain?
No, in the time he spent behind the Iron Curtain, he was ruthlessly tortured by the KGB. And that's, as you pointed out, detailed in the book. He did not suffer any psychological impairment or damage. The only damage he did suffer was damage to his heart. He was subject to, it's either atrial or ventricular fibrillation, but it's the procedure where to treat it in modern medicine of the 1990s, the doctors at Lenox Hill Hospital, they would have to stop his heart and then start it again to get it in proper rhythm. And he told me that was a direct result of his vacation time, if you want to call it, behind the Iron Curtain.
Wow. It's pretty relentless just to read it, to be honest with you. It was pretty rough just getting through that part. I mean, there's so many details in there I don't want to say on the radio, but boy, you got to read it to get the details. We're going to be at a break here in a moment, and there's go ahead.
No, one thing I want to interject was it's a testament to his fortitude and strength that the KGB was never able to break him, because had they broken him, the church behind the Iron Curtain would have collapsed overnight, and it never did.
Praise be to God. We're right on the cusp of a break. I want to get into, there's so much to discuss. The world got to know Father Malachi Martin, Bishop Martin, when, Hostage to the Devil came out. And then there was the Keys to the Blood. And then there was Windswept House. And there's others, right? And I think today we probably think back and remember mostly about Windswept House. So there's a lot to be said there that I want to get into. The Black Mass and ceremony that was done at the Vatican. I want to talk about that, the Third Secret of Fatima. Then there's the 12 cardinals to govern the world in a secret post-apocalyptic Cold War, the day after scenario. Was he one of those 12? That's part of the questions in my mind. Then there's the incident at Fort Bragg, where the U.S. Army decided to have its own, sort of a PSYOP program, which might have just opened the curtain to the devil, the diabolic, to possess people. There's a great story in the book recounting that. And there's the Valid Sacraments chapter, which will really scare you. We're having a conversation about the great man of mystery, Father Malachi Martin, Bishop Malachi Martin, as this brand new book is published today, in fact. Malachi Martin, The Shadow of the Vatican by Robert Marro Jr. Robert Marro Jr. is on with us to talk about this. But you can get a copy. You can look for it on Amazon, but we're going to link to it in the show notes for you as well. Robert, welcome back. Praise be to God. I want to turn to page 137. This isn't the chapter on the issue, the Black Mass, the satanic ritual at the Vatican, but I think it encapsulates the thought well here. It says, for those who've read The Keys of This Blood, it's well-known fact that Malachi believed because of this satanic ceremony held at the Vatican in 1963, a malign power had alternately referred to as the superforce or the anti-church had indeed ensconced itself in the Vatican. He said there was no other way to explain what, with a straight face, the wholesale collapse of the Roman Catholic Church in the years since the close of the Second Vatican Council in 65 and the current day, circa 1991. Thousands of Catholic priests, whether diocesan or priests in orders like the Jesuits, either petitioned Rome to be released from their vows, in other words, laicized, or just flat out abandoned their vocations. And it goes on from there. And we all know the stats because we've covered them extensively on this program. But I want to start with getting you to tell us what happened in 1963 at the Vatican and elsewhere at the same time.
Exactly. It's a ceremony that the Luciferians in the Vatican and in the Catholic Church in the United States refer to as the enthronement of the prince in the citadel of the enemy. And Malachi said that was their exact phrase for it. And it was coordinated over an open telephone line. The details have now become fairly well known through both internet revelation as well as what Malachi detailed in his book Windswept House, which he said was 85 to 90% fact and 10% fictionalized names so that, in his words, he could keep his kneecaps.
So he could keep his kneecaps. I love that. And
that's exactly what he said.
And you also talk about the, Paul VI, speaking of like the smoke of Satan entering through some mysterious but not yet so mysterious fissure. I mean, this seems like a big deal. Now, most people would probably dismiss this as pure symbology. It doesn't really mean anything, but there's real power in this.
You're right, Joe. And not only that, but it also continues down to the current day. A lot of people don't like to think of it. They don't like to acknowledge it. It makes them very uncomfortable. But sometimes you have to face uncomfortable facts if you want to reveal the truth. I also reveal in the book how I had an interview, and I directly quote her, with Rachel Mastrogiacomo, the victim of ritual satanic abuse by the former, now laicized, Father Jacob Bertrand, and how she was stonewalled by then Bishop McElroy in San Diego, California, in her efforts to have justice brought to her and other people, young women and children who had been satanically abused. And that occurred in the mid-2000s, about 40 years after the enthronement. So this is not something that was a one-time event and then faded away. It still lurks in the darkest corners of the Vatican.
I've interviewed Rachel on a number of occasions. I've also interviewed another satanic ritual abuse survivor as well. And I think those are all linked in my YouTube channel podcast playlist. But it is shocking when people hear those stories because they think this is too fanciful. It's like Hollywood. This can't be real. And yet Malachi Martin shared those details with you, and you share some of them in the book, which I encourage everybody to read today. But I also want to get into, because I'm trying to rush because of the clock, because there's not enough time to talk about it all.
Sure,
so you got to get the book. But I want to get on to the Third Secret of Fatima. And these are all related. Something else, Malachi was very well known for is Art Bell conversations and the Jansen conversations from Canada. I mean, like, he talked about the Third Secret often. He read the Third Secret when he was under Cardinal Bay,
yes,
but he never revealed it verbatim. But you do talk about this. Page 72, you say, after researching this information, the next time we sat down for lunch, I asked Malachi if what the Pope had said at Fulda in the autumn of 1980 was an accurate representation of the hidden secret when John Paul II said, quote, the oceans will flood whole areas of the earth, and that from one moment to the next, millions of people will perish, close quote. He only gave me a piercing stare in response. Did JP2 reveal the Third Secret sort of on the down low back in 1980?
Yes, he did. Malachi told him, because there was no internet back then, and when me and Malachi were talking about it, the internet was actually in its embryonic infancy. And he just told me, go look up what John Paul II said to the pilgrims at Fulda, Germany in 1980. So I did. And the next time we met, I sat down with him and said, look, he said that the full secret was not revealed so as not to give the worldwide power of communism a military edge over the West that the West would have no response for. And he also said it was not revealed because people, if they were convinced that nothing could be done against approaching catastrophes, that they were only interested in it for sensationalism. And that's the wrong reason. Then he said, John Paul took his rosary, held it up, and said, here is the weapon. Pray this, and ask the Mother of God for nothing else. For if there is such a message that says oceans will flood entire portions of the earth and millions of people will perish from one moment to the next. Now I'm paraphrasing, but he said, why should we bother publishing such a message in the first place if you're only interested in it for sensationalism?
We're going to run out of time, Rob. There's too much to talk about here. Speaking of sensationalism, let's go to the incident at Fort Bragg. We didn't even get to the valid sacraments. We'll do that in the after show. That's the incident at Fort Bragg. Now, okay, we've all been blessed with great Hollywood movies, men staring at goats about, secret CIA-run programs of psyops and channeling spirits and, seeing things mystically into the future or whatever. But nobody knew that the Army decided to have their own little program doing such things. Tell us about how Malachi Martin was called to the Pentagon.
Sure. It was back in 1990, I believe, shortly after Desert Storm. And he was contacted by an aide to the Secretary of Defense, who at the time was Dick Cheney, and asked to come down to Washington and attend a meeting at which, we'll just say, a controversial subject would be discussed. And it turned out that I went down with him because he didn't like to travel alone. We took the Amtrak Metroliner from Washington. And it turned out that at that Pentagon meeting, Malachi and I came face to face with the results of such a mind war. And that's the actual name of the book that came out afterwards. But it's psychological warfare that was being inculcated into a select group of soldiers at Fort Bragg. This is things like learning how to snuff out a flame with your thoughts at a short distance. And the ultimate goal was to extend that to snuff out a life at thousands of miles just by mental warfare. It involved Satanism, and it was directly the result of the input of the late Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. And Colonel Aquino, just look him up on the internet. He was an out and proud satanic high priest.
Crazy.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.